Hello and welcome to the Flipping and Wholesaling Houses, Flipping or Wholesaling Houses in New York show. I am Michael Pinter, where I teach you how to start flipping or wholesaling houses, or how, if you're already doing it, how to grow your business. Now, got a question from Matt, and it said, is there something that's called a performance deed or a deed in lieu that you can sign with the seller that enables ownership to transfer back to the original seller in the event you miss a payment to them so they can avoid the foreclosure process, referring to a seller financing deal? So there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, if you can get a seller financing deal where the seller is selling it to you, that's great. In New York, you don't want to be the bank, but in other places you can be the bank. But if the seller is financing to you and the seller wants to be the bank, that's amazing. Now, this performance deed in lieu, what they're talking about is some magic document that immediately reverts the property back to the seller in case you screwed up. So no, there is nothing like that in New York. That might exist in other places, but I don't think it really works the way you think it works. Because who holds that deed? Who's got access to that deed? What the hell is the story with that deed? Okay, there is something that people do sometimes called a confessional judgment, which should shorten the foreclosure process, that you won't need a judgment for foreclosure because you've already signed it. But you need to trust, both parties need to trust each other to even sign that. And with this deed thing, you need a lot of trust, right? So there's no simple way for that to happen, right? So in a lot of states, right, states like Texas that are not non-judicial states, they are called trustee states. If you don't make payments on a mortgage, it's a relatively quick process to get the property back. So it's a great place for you to either be the bank or do a deal with someone who's going to be the bank. Because if everybody doesn't do what they say they're going to do, right, everyone's afraid that the payments are going to be missed. It's a very quick process to get the property back. In New York, where foreclosures can take 10 to 12 to 14 years, it's a long process, and all of these possible ways to make it quicker are not so simple. They still take a long time. So they work if the parties trust each other, that no one's going to do anything wrong, no one's going to submit a deed to be recorded when it shouldn't have been, that kind of thing. So it's important that you understand that in states that take a long time, it's still going to take a long time. There are certain documents that can shorten things, but it's still going to take a long time. And in states that are quick, you probably don't need the document in general. So this brings us to the topic really of creative finance, right? So I've said this a bunch of times. In my opinion, and maybe I'm missing some, there are four main tools on the belt of the creative finance person. The first is subject to, which means you buy a property subject to the first mortgage staying in place. Okay, I've said many times, I think it's as close to impossible to be done in New York as I know, because the seller is usually represented by an attorney, and any attorney who would advise his client to sell a property and have the mortgage stay on his credit report and have someone else responsible for the payments, in my opinion, would probably be subject to malpractice lawsuit if the guy stopped making the payments. That's the first problem. So let's say seller doesn't want to be represented by an attorney. That solves some of the problem. You still have a title company. Now, title companies in 49 states really run the transaction, right? You might have heard this term, a seller-friendly title company. That's not the way it works in New York. An attorney does all the money, disperses all the money in New York, and a title company really in New York is only a service provider with two main jobs: to make sure all the liens are paid off, which is the problem with a mortgage, and to make sure all the taxes are paid off. And I mean, sometimes you consider taxes can become a lien too. So I have never seen a title company that said, well, we're just going to let it sit there, even if both parties agree. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible. I've had title companies allow certain liens to stay on there, minor liens, small small things that we all agree on. Maybe they'll hold money in escrow, maybe they don't care. But a mortgage, I don't think they will. So maybe you can get past that too, but it's hard in New York. Now, outside of New York, subject to is a great tool, because no seller attorneys, title companies know how it works. Very simple process. There is a due on sale clause. It's easy to avoid getting caught. As long as the mortgage payments are being made, it's not going to be a problem. So subject to is a powerful tool outside of New York. The second tool in the belt of creative finance is seller financing, as Matt asked, where the seller finances it to you, you're buying it. That's great if The payments make sense, right? So you work out the payments where you can then rent the property and get more. That's amazing, right? That works. It's great. It's hard to make work in New York. I've tried it a few times because our numbers are so high and because our taxes are so high that it's not always easy to make work. That's the second tool. It works in New York. No problem with it in New York. Third thing is lease options. So there's a bunch of different lease options. You can lease option a property. Basically, lease option means I'm going to rent the property from you with an option to buy it at a certain price. So again, that's sometimes hard to make work in New York, where the numbers to finance the property and the numbers to pay the taxes can be high, right? Very common in my area to have over $1,000 a month in taxes. Very common. So it screws up your numbers. You can lease up. So you can get a lease option from the seller. You can wholesale that lease option to another tenant buyer. You can sandwich lease option, which means you lease option it from the seller and then you lease option it to a tenant buyer, and you make a spread on the difference in between. Those things are great. They're very hard to make work in most parts of New York because of the high prices and the high taxes, but it's possible. I tried to do one once. It didn't work. Doesn't mean I shouldn't have tried harder. It does work in New York. Then the third thing is you seller finance it out where you're the bank. So I advise very strongly against doing that in New York. Like I said, the foreclosures can take decades in New York. So you don't want to be the bank, because if a guy doesn't pay, you're really up the creek. But it works great in other places. I know a guy who was 500-600 of these properties in Texas, bought them cheap, lease optioned them out. Seller financed them out to buyers for somewhat similar numbers to what they'd be paying in rent. Beautiful deal. Guy doesn't pay. In Texas, you foreclose quickly. You can also sell the notes if you need cash for them at somewhat of a discount. So these are great tools in your finance toolbox. I still believe that only two of them are even worth thinking about in New York. I don't believe subject to or being the bank makes sense, but lease option and seller financing from the seller to you can work in New York. So it's important to understand. I speak to people all the time, great people, who bought programs from great people. So, for example, Pace Morby's a sub 2 crew. It's a good program. It's a good community. It's good. It's just really very hard to make work in New York, subject to. But the other creative financing can work. So I have no problem if you want to do that. I have opted to not. There was a period of time where I wanted to do that. I really wanted to hire somebody to do that. I think it can work, but no, very, very, very few people are doing those things in New York. So there are very few people doing lease options, very few people doing seller financing from the seller in New York. Very rare. So you'd be offering somebody something different. So it may work, right? I never really gave it enough effort to decide whether it's going to work or not, but I think it's important to understand what really can work effectively in New York and what can't. And if you're out of New York, you can use all those in your tool belt. I see no reason not to. Just understand one thing, and that is I've seen people give sellers a lot of options on things like this. Most sellers are not going to understand anything that I just said. I'm guessing half the people that are watching this video probably don't understand half the things I just said. It's not so simple, right? I know them because I've been talking about them and dealing with them for many years. I believe a really important rule to live by when you're selling is a confused mind says no. If you confuse a seller, even if you really want to help them and you are offering them great options, they may say no to you. So it's important to keep things as simple as possible. And it's some of the reasons why I'm not as direct as I'd like to be with some sellers in my intentions of what I'm doing with the property. Sellers really understand one thing: how much money are they going to get? And maybe the second thing is how quickly are they going to get it? If I get into an issue of what I'm doing with the property after, which could be complicated, I believe I could lose a lot more deals. Now, maybe that's BS in my head, but that's what I think. So I try to keep things as simple as possible for sellers, and I think you should too. So even if you're offering creative finance, be careful as to how you explain it, how many options you give to a seller about different things they can do, and try and keep things as simple as possible. I hope this was helpful. If you're interested in all the ways I can help you, go to howtoflipnewyork.com. If you are interested in finding out more about one-on-one coaching I offer, go to coaching.howtoflipnewyork.com. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe. If you're watching on any media channel, well, please click the thumbs up. The likes really help my SEO because the algorithm works if more people like it. It gets shown to more people, and I've been get a lot more views in my videos and more likes from them. So thank you for every time you click the thumbs up. Please keep the comments coming. I post 5 times a week. This came from Matt K. I don't always know what to say, so your comments help me a lot by giving me things to talk about. If it's a simple comment, a simple answer to a comment, I'll just reply with an answer. If it's something that I've done before, I might send you links to videos on it. If something new, I will do a brand new video on it. So thank you very, very much for watching. I really, really appreciate all the views and all the likes. Thank you.